A couple of years ago, I made a video about how World War I wouldn't be coming to War Thunder and how this is the sort of thing that Gaijin typically tends to avoid due to the lack of interest. Well, obviously, their new flight sim game that's coming out called Aces of Thunder is featuring World War I aircraft to start off with, and I have a feeling that they're gauging interest on World War I vehicles by introducing a limited time testing mode in which you can partake in some World War I battles. Granted, it's not great, it does have its flaws, and there have been repeated buffs to certain vehicles, but in general, there seems to be quite a bit of action going on, at least in terms of the German team. If you can't really get a match, switch to the Allies. It's a bit of a pain, but the Charmond, a little light tank destroyer thing the French get, is quite an interesting vehicle. Anyway, so why was I wrong about World War I coming to War Thunder? Well, initially, we thought it was because there wasn't necessarily a place for it in-game, considering that they had stated on Reddit before, and the CEO had stated on Reddit that it was more of a material issue and a logistics issue more so than anything else that had mattered in the game previously, because unlike modelling, World War II aircraft, which usually have a solid structure, World War I aircraft are made up of various strengths, tensiles, and various other componentry, which make the aircraft incredibly fragile. You're lucky that these things are even flying, let alone existing in the current world. To put it in perspective, it'd be like having a sponge and then having a rock. These things are just, well, flimsy and dainty. Now, when it comes to April Fools, this is what the whole entire event is about. The World War I section adds a bunch of infantry, and you get, to access some great vehicles. There's a couple of tanks and a couple of other bits and pieces, but for the most part, it really is just a flat mud field with a couple of cap points and a couple of variations of maps, and then, you get chased by some fighters and things. If you have game sounds, you will have engines. Obviously, I'm running custom game sounds, so there wasn't any engines for this, but it's still pretty fun. It is worth giving a go, especially considering that it is an event that is dedicated fully to World War I, although there are a few missing World War I vehicles that could have been potentially interesting, like the FT-17, but hey, it is what it is, and you don't necessarily get to control what goes on. But you do get access to a number of vehicles. There are obtainable vehicles, 4 of which, the Mark V, the Charmond, the Garford, and the Handley Page 12. The German Empire gets a A7V, a Beutepanzer, and also the same thing. There's a Mephisto decal, various other bits and pieces, and it's pretty cool, but they are, each stage can be purchased for 599 Golden Eagles if you really want that. And then there is obviously a quick look at the Entente vehicles, and then basically a SPAD 12, I think that is, for France. And then the German vehicles are very similar, with the A7V and the Fokker D VVI for Germany. Now, you won't be able to receive this one as a reward because it's going into Aces of Thunder, but there's also the ability to control a Zeppelin, and there are infantry on the fields in the trenches. So, a pretty okay event overall. 3 years ago, I did make the claim that this wasn't necessarily going to be an event on its own. More so, it was going to be an April Fool's event if they were going to do it. And I was proven right. This is a part of the April Fool's update. These vehicles will not be permanently in the game, although you can obtain a couple of the vehicles as I showed before. There are a couple of coupons, and you follow your tasks. They are purchasable, as I said, by Golden Eagles. But what was funny was the reaction from the community when some of the traction nerfs and things were just blatantly obvious. The Mark V couldn't get out of spawn, and there are clips of them everywhere just being laughed at by German A7Vs. The A7Vs were basically impenetrable, and there were a bunch of other traction issues because obviously there are a bunch of things. Oh, look, a Zeppelin. One of the things you can fly. I was most annoyed that I couldn't just jump out in a Zeppelin and have a little bit of fun, because obviously at the moment it is a lot of people playing the German teams only because, well, the Entente kind of is a bit lackluster in terms of what you can actually get access to. My claim 3 years ago in this very video was that most people were playing top tier, and this remains true to this day. Most of the hype, most of anything that comes out in an update is focused around Gaijin's sort of making money, I should say. And that's not the case for what World War I would sort of incite. This is a slow-moving behemoth of a vehicle. The gameplay is a bit limited to an extent, which is kind of why they've done it in an April Fool's format. As I said 3 years ago, Basically, my opinion hasn't remained unchanged. You know, as a vehicle collector, I love quirky and unique vehicles. Having a different sort of gameplay style is fantastic. I don't enjoy playing high-end or paying $80 just to play a single vehicle. So there are, you know, elements that have remained the same, because ultimately, even with biplanes, they get very intense and they're incredibly fun. And you'll see a section of the clip in a moment. The dogfighting is quite entertaining, but practical or not, a World War I tech tree would be just fun, and War Thunder obviously needs fun. And some of the comments in the video definitely said that, well, yeah, let's be honest, War Thunder needs to be fun again, and this is something different. This is what War Thunder does typically every year. They do an event that is kind of fun, a bit different from the normal, and it allows for a bit of creativity on Guardian's behalf. For the rest of the year, they don't do bugger all. And, well, here we are. For what it's worth, that video was just an explanation of the technology that World War I could have had. You know, zeppelins, artillery, various other bits and pieces. You know, interesting bombs, biplanes, triplanes, the various works. We've already got World War I ships in game as of this point. That's something that wasn't necessarily a thing back when I made that first April Fool's on why World War I won't be in War Thunder vibe, but it does feel, and there's a look at the A7V briefly, it does feel like this could be a permanent thing, and while they are giving us some of those vehicles permanently, it isn't necessarily something that I would consider to be that overtly, you know, different from low tier as is. At this stage, the cockpits are fantastic, and there's some of the models are fantastic. Sound effects are okay, although I am missing some because I've obviously got the sound mod running. There's no engine sounds, for example. And I've always wanted World War I airplanes to be in the game, period, because it would be something that is interesting, unique, and a bit diverse from your top-end stuff. Granted, the money and the incentivization for people to actually unlock them and play them is another thing altogether. If we're seeing that they're kind of a bit terrible now, imagine what it would be if, in future, we have World War I to start out the tech trees, rather than starting in interwar. Basically 1936 is when we kind of about start. Although there are vehicles that are earlier from 1922, etc. And obviously I mentioned before, Naval does have World War I vehicles. But as a proof of concept, it's here. You can play it now. You can go and enjoy the event. You can go partake in it. You can get some rewards, get a nice decal, get a loading screen, etc., etc., and have the ability to take 4 of the vehicles that are present home with you after completing some tasks. Granted, you can't get the Zeppelin, you can't get the the Fokker. That goes into Aces of Thunder, is the new VR flight sim that's coming up this year. And you can't get I think it's the Beutepanzer as well. But it'd be interesting to see some other things in-game. But nevertheless, doesn't necessarily matter. The lack of World War I games and interest in World War I is kind of a bit shocking. I mean, I understand it from a conventional technology point of view. There isn't very many games that feature World War I aircraft, World War I vehicles, or even infantry. There is a Zonzo, Verdun, various other games like that, but there isn't. Obviously Battlefield 1 was a big one, but not really in a vehicle combat simulator. So War Thunder's missed out on a market share that could have been, you know, obviously it's big into its modern military stuff, but why not go the other way? Start in World War I, since the birth of aviation, and you're going to current day, you may as well, and it just makes sense. Now, would it make sense to revamp the tech trees and revamp the ranks? Probably not. That's probably why they've gone with an event-style system instead. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to shoot down this poor biplane. Come here. You're gone, mate. Absolutely gone. That's about all the dogfighting we've got time for. Because there isn't really anything else to showcase here. This match was kind of a bit lackluster, and I forgot to start recording at the start of the match, where I actually got a couple of tank kills. Regardless, it's kind of cool. Like, I really enjoyed this event. Unlike other events, like last year's event was a bit lackluster. The Mad Max crossover with the extraction type shooter deal, and you've got to go crafting and looting for items, that was absolutely horrible. This, on the other hand, is actually quite refreshing. It's cool. It's not great, but it is better than some of the other ideas that they've had, particularly Silent Thunder, where they did submarines. And this is the thing, World War I would have been an interesting aviation and ground vehicle addition to the game. You've already got it in ships. Ship gameplay is irrelevant because it roughly plays the same. You've got your World War I dreadnoughts, they're all the same. What people really want is to have fun flying in dogfights with their World War One counterparts, and they want to be able to do it in a way that allows them to play maybe some silly ground forces with, you know, some Beuter Panzers and some other different vehicles that happen to tickle their fancy. Now, this event isn't perfect, and I'm going to showcase a clip about the Mark V just falling and failing to do any sort of, you know, traction work. Look at this slight hill. Now, I do this on purpose just to test whether they've actually buffed the traction or not, and believe it or not, they have. Immediately spin to the left. This thing should be able to climb this hill no problem whatsoever and cross all these trenches. I'm spinning on the spot in the side, the vehicle. I'm having to reverse up as the only way of means to try and support my friendly who's in the French tank destroyer, and I can't do it at all. I can't even cross this little bit of hill here. So I'm having to back up again, having to push back. Alright, here we go, finally into the gutter, into a bit of the ditch, which would be completely traversable in normal scenarios. This heavy object basically is acting like a bar of soap, and it's slowly lumbering across the battlefield. Now, yeah, I was wrong about World War One. Obviously, they are not the best gameplay-wise. They don't make for the most fun entertainment, but that's what it is. Everybody has their favourite thing, and everybody has something that is kind of unique. This event has really showcased that, you know, War Thunder has something to offer and can be something different and can offer you a different experience at all levels, as it should be. So therefore, I'm petitioning Gaijin to add these vehicles permanently, and we'll see how we go from there. Alright, let me know what you think. Have you tried the World War I event? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you excited for this, or were you more excited for the first-person drones that were inside the unofficial trailer that was sprouting some very interesting concepts? But are you disappointed that there isn't permanent infantry in War Thunder that you can control or drive around with? Let me know. And that's really about it. For me, this has been more of just a bit of a test, a bit of an exciting sort of look at things, and I really hope that you know, they continue the good work on you know, updates, because unfortunately April Fool's updates tend to be better than more game updates later down the year. My name is Ash, thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.